Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. Big week for the UFC here. We have UFC 286 going down in London, England this Saturday. It's a trilogy fight between now champ Leon Edwards and former long-reigning champion Kamaru Usman. Absolute banger of a co-main event here between Rafael, Fiziev, and Justin Gaethje, two top lightweight contenders. And the feature bout between Gunnar and Bryan Barberena. 15 total fights for a nice pay-per-view showing. An early night of fights for us here as well. We have a lot of European, English talent. You got Mikhaev, Vettori, two Chris Duncans on the same card. Nice little night of fights UFC's got set up for us. Last week was another night in the green for both sides of the podcast, which won't be having any complaints there. But Keith Peterson stand-up, man, 2.5 unit swing for me on the Sun Sal fight. And then Jan getting 50-45, man, was the absolute last thing that I thought was going to play out. But profit's profit. Let you go ahead and recap our cards so we can get started this week.
Yeah, I think overall we both had some pretty good reads on the card. We'll look at yours first. I think the one that was the most frustrating that I feel like everybody in the MMA Twitter sphere missed was the under 2.5 rounds on the Victor Petrino versus Anton Turkalj. I mean, there were 20 different times where that fight could have finished, and laying minus 160, I think I'd lay that price tag over and over again, so I don't fault you for that at all. I think your best play of the night was probably the violence parlay you put together. You had Nikita Krylov, Ryan Spann under 2.5, and then the SD Dumas versus Josh Fremd under 2.5. You got minus 132 and hit it hard for 1.5 units. That was some solid profit. I mean, probably... I already said the parlay might have been the best, but I think the best play of the night was the Martinez wins by decision. He was already a big dog. You called how he was going to win it. And even though it was only a 0.25 sprinkle, you got a unit in return. You ended up, like you said, skimming by with some profit, 0.11, 1% return on investment. Hard to complain when you're seeing green, for sure. Looking over at my card, best bet of the night was Alexander Volkov. We both profited on that.
Too easy.
He looked, like a minus 800, man. I mean, that version of Romanov, I hope that he never shows back up in the cage. I think my biggest problem with my betting card was probably laying the juice on my parlay. I had Bautista to win at minus 950. He covered that price tag. But it was Nurmagomedov, which we talked about it in the podcast leading up to it. You pay a lot of juice for the name. He was fighting somebody who had a similar style that was going to make it close, and that's exactly what happened. So ended up losing 1.59 units on that one. And then I also lost on the Lipsky inside the distance plus 850. I thought that was going to hit. Yeah, I really did. At the end of the first round, I was like, all right, well, she'll catch her eventually. Just didn't happen. I shouldn't have gotten greedy. Should have just laid the plus 300 for Lipsky to win. But for a bunch of good reads and everything else, I only ended up profiting 2.02 units with a 13% return on investment. And like you said, as long as we're in the green, it's thumbs up from us. So hopefully we can keep that rolling in the next week. In our main event for the welterweight championship, we have Leon Edwards taking on Kamaru Usman. And I'll be honest with you, man, it's still weird for me to call Leon Edwards the champion of the welterweight division. Usman had been so dominant for such a long time, it just kind of felt like it was his division. And even 24 minutes into that last fight, it still felt like it was Usman that was clearly levels above anyone that he had faced in the division. But it was that head kick heard across the world that changed all of it. Leon able to pull himself out of the fire, land that devastating head kick that sent Usman to the shadow realm, and essentially put a pause on any GOAT talk surrounding Kamaru Usman's career. In this bout, I do think that there's a couple of things that are going to be working against the former champion. The first one being the most obvious. I know people have touched on it leading up into this week. It's no longer at elevation. We saw a significant drop-off in Leon's work rate after that first round, and I do think that it was probably because it was at elevation. It was in Kamaru's backyard, and now we're in Leon's backyard. I think the crowd will be working for him. He'll be in a better headspace leading up to the fight during the week. And then the last and maybe the biggest one, Kamaru Usman's 36 now and coming off one of the most devastating KOs I've ever seen. It's not like a normal KO where the ref steps in and, it's just a TKO. I mean, he was out cold, thought he was dead, and that's not something that you want to see on somebody who's aging in their career. I think in this fight, my biggest concern for the current champion, Leon, is his ability to get outworked. A lot of the times in his fight, he gets caught in the mirror, I think. It's not necessarily that he doesn't have the cardio. He just doesn't do enough. And if Usman's constantly pushing that pace and embracing the grind like he has his entire career and like he has in the past few fights, as long as he can avoid that head kick or that clean shot from Leon, I think it might take him a round to kind of get back into his rhythm. But once he does that, I hate to say that Leon, only chance of winning is landing the kill shot, but it certainly is his most likely path to victory. I just think that right here we're gonna have to see Leon go to a place where he wasn't initially in that last fight. I don't think that he's going to have the opportunity to get bailed out here. If he's going to win, I think he's going to have to do it dominantly. And, Kamaru, he's going to be playing it safer than ever. I think going into that fight, Kamaru might have got a little striking happy,
Yeah.
He had a lot of success standing on the feet, and maybe he thought that he could do both. I think this time we're going to see a much more grappling heavy Kamaru Usman. This not being at elevation, it probably helps Usman as well.
Yeah.
So he's not going to have those time periods where he's at range and not pushing the pace. I think this is Kamaru Usman's fight to win. I want to see Leon Edwards retain the belt, but I do think that this is Kamaru's fight, so he's my choice for this one.
Yeah, it goes down as a highlight of 2022 for me, almost being lulled to sleep, followed by a head kick, like you said, heard around the world, man. Pound for pound headshot. Dead, What do you say? Look at him now. That's awesome, man. I couldn't have been happier. Had a bet on Leon at like plus 280 and thought that was a dead ticket up until that happened, but it's a fight that absolutely needs to happen. You talk about Leon, who's on a 10-fight win streak with this last loss coming to Usman in 2015, and Usman's 18-fight winning streak just ended by Leon. We're talking almost 30 fights with the guys only been beaten by each other. It's clearly two of the best welterweights on the planet, and when you look at them online, these guys look like they're in the best shape of their lives heading into this one. And then, you touched on the big aspect for that a lot of people talk about it, and it's elevation for Leon, because he did seem to gas out quick. And Usman trains in Colorado. Usman trains at elevation like on a daily basis. That was nothing new to fight in that for him, like it was for Leon. And now you talk about it's all the kind of out of octagon things that Kamaru's going to be having to deal with this time around. But you've seen almost, 8 full rounds between the two or something, 39 minutes of fight time, and 36 of those have pretty much looked the exact same. I feel like it's pretty easy to get a read on the fight and what's going to happen. I expect Usman to pressure him. I expect him to stall him against the fence, working some takedowns. With the success he's had for those 37 minutes, I doubt the game plan deviates even the slightest, But while it was outranged for any of those minutes, it did look like Leon was getting the best of Usman. He was beating up the lead leg. He's a southpaw, so he already has that natural advantage. And all the feints, the head kick, the body kick, it's all his best weapon. So it's no shock that he was able to find that when he had any time out on the feet. And then Usman's knockouts over Gilbert Burns, the knockouts over, Colby, like he was getting comfortable on the feet. And then you stuck somebody who was the much more talented striker than any of those guys I just mentioned in front of him. The biggest question, man, you talked about where's Kamaru's head at. He's talked about retirement early, wanting to spend time with his daughter. You hear him on Joe Rogan saying he can't even run on concrete anymore. It felt like retirement was right around the corner for him already, and he was 59 seconds away from shutting this chapter, with Leon. I just question where his motivation is, where his head's at. He 70%, I guess the line, it does seem right. It's kind of what I'm also going to get at, because Usman's won 70% of the minutes, if not more, that these two have fought. And so, the line, it does seem correct. But at the same time, I do kind of lean toward dog or pass again in this situation. But, plus 180, not as good as your plus 300 that you had last time around. And I do feel like Leon, losing all the minutes that he has, is extremely finish reliant in this spot. So if you're going to take a shot on Leon, I think you take it inside the distance or something like that, because it definitely looked like Kamaru was a minus 500 up until a minute left in that fight. In our co-main event of the evening, we see Justin Gaethje taking on Rafael Fiziev. What an incredible co-main event, man. One of the best non-title fights that I've been looking forward to in a minute. Has fight of the night written all over it. I just can't envision a world where this fight, honestly, is not good. You got Justin Gaethje, who I believe has more like post-fight bonuses in the UFC than he does UFC fights. I agree with him talking this week. Most exciting fighter the UFC's probably ever had. Not missing a Gaethje fight. And they're both going to get the fight they want here. I doubt either one of these guys is shooting any type of takedowns. Gaethje finally given one of the prospects a crack here at the top five. It was some criticism that this division's been getting for a long time. Those top five guys just kind of swapping back and forth opponents. Never really given the Fizievs, the Armans time, a chance to come up. And now he's having to do so. He's coming off 2 losses at capturing gold. He's 35 years old himself, and he's taken some damage, and it could be another spot like Kamaru where I question a fighter's motivation to try to get back to the belt now that he's having to work his way down at some of the contenders and fight down in the rankings. But the money line's disrespectful, man. We're talking about a guy with double the fights, more 5-round experience, and someone who's not scared to walk Fiziev down and force a firefight. It reminds me a lot of the fight with Barbosa. You got a very, very technical striker in front of you, one that you cannot give any range to. And Gaethje doesn't. From the moment that fight starts, man, he walks him down, he crowds the kicker, and he throws a calf kick immediately to let him know, like, yo, dude, I can kick as well. I got a dangerous calf kick. And I think crowding the kicker is exactly what you have to do when you're going to fight someone like Fiziev. But Justin's defensive tendencies also could get him in trouble against this kind of this caliber of striker. But at plus 200, man, I am willing to take a gamble that he's willing to make this fight dirty with that pace and pressure. I think if he puts Fiziev in a fight like Poirier, like Eddie, like Charles, like Chandler, like Fiziev wants to point fight. Like I've seen him in a fight with Bobby Green in round 3, get scrappy, get dirty, but he's no Justin Gaethje, man. I've not seen that type of dog in him. If Fiziev is able to get his space, yeah, it really could be a nightmare for Justin because he's much faster. He's much more technical. He was just knocked down by Charles, wobbled by Chandler. Just all those fight miles starting to add up. It does seem like he could be a walking bad TKO to happen one day, and it could be someone with the speed and technique of Fiziev to get it done. But I just go back to the way Justin fights, and he's not going to give Fiziev that space. He's going to be in his face. He's going to be crowding those kicks. I got a .75 unit shot at plus 200 to return a unit and a half. I think we feel kind of similar on Gaethje here.
Yeah, man. It seems coming into this week, it's a foregone conclusion that Fiziev's going to get the knockout. But yeah, neither one of us agree, man. I think Fiz has had the easiest path to top 5 that could be carved out from him from the UFC. The Mustafayev fight, I think that the UFC thought that he was a little better than he was, and they realized that they might not have had what they thought they had. So then they started giving him Alex White, Mark DeCasey, who hadn't figured out that he was a grappler yet, Moicano. That's a tough fight, but a great matchup for Fiziev. Bobby Green, Brad Riddell. We're talking about a ton of different strikers. And although I don't think Gaethje's going to be using his grappling here, I love that he has that to fall back on in case he does get into some tricky situations. Hopefully he doesn't just throw up his guard like we've seen in the past, and he can kind of branch out his game just to in the tricky moments where he has been caught, extend that out and just get the fight to the later rounds. I think the UFC really likes Fiziev, mostly because Dana saw that clip of him doing the Matrix move on the regional scene, and he just wanted to bring him into the UFC, get some highlight clips. And I think it's a nice change of pace from the Russian grapplers that are usually moving up the rankings in the lightweight division specifically. For Justin, I think the UFC saw him in similar fashion. He might not choose to win his fights using all the aspects of MMA, but he surely is exciting. UFC threw him in early with a lot of faith, coming in, giving him Michael Johnson, and then immediately throwing him in the fire against the former champ and Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, and we were given instant classics. I think a lot of people are giving Justin some undeserved shit for his current UFC record of 6-4. I highly doubt that Fiziev would have had any different results if he took the same path in the UFC. So when I laid the money on Justin Gaethje, I admittedly thought that this was a 5-rounder. I don't understand how it's not. Even it being in a co-main event spot on the pay-per-view, I gotta imagine the UFC could afford that extra 10 minutes onto the fight, and I don't think there's a single fan out there that would have argued against it. That being said, you touched on it. Fiziev, he throws with all that power and he carries so much muscle into the octagon that it's extremely difficult for him to keep the pace that he wants to, even for 15 minutes. Gaethje, on the other hand, if it's a striking battle and he's throwing with all his might, he has 5 rounds of cardio all day still. We've actually seen that in the Tony fight, where even in the 5th round, he's throwing the hardest shots that he's landed so far. I trust that Trevor Whitman and his team are kind of cooking up something for the striking of Fizz. I'm doubtful that Justin, like I said, is going to incorporate that grappling, but I do think that his team can recognize the tendencies of Fiziev pre-fight, and if he can avoid getting slept early, that power and accuracy that Gaethje has, I think that he could finish the fight late when Fiziev can't even bring his hands up in the 3rd round. I also think it's a cat and mouse game with that calf kick of Gaethje. First, I think it would be very wise of Gaethje to invest in the low calf kick that he's shown that he loves so much. It'll get Fiziev's movement down, and over the course of 15 minutes, I think it could really take a toll on Fiziev, who's pretty power reliant. If he can't step on that front foot, he's going to have an issue. But the thing is Gaethje opens himself up with that calf kick. I think Fiziev's camp's probably thinking, well, how can we time the counter on that calf kick? And I think that that's probably the most likely point in which we see Justin actually get touched up. I hope that this is a dogfight because I'll take Gaethje plus 200 in a dogfight any day of the week. I think that's probably the overwhelming reason why we're both backing him here, is that we expect Justin to fight for your money, and plus 200 against somebody who stylistically matches up well for Justin. At least he's not fighting an Islam or Khabib or something like that. So I do think that we have a great matchup here, and one I'm excited for. I'm glad that we're back in the dog. I do think he's the value side. For the showcase fight of the pay-per-view, we have Gunnar Nelson taking on Bryan Barberena in the welterweight division. Honestly, I think we're getting a pretty decent price on Gunny here, man. Dude hasn't managed to get his signature submission victory in 3 fights, and even though he dropped the ball in his last fight against Takashi Sato, I do think the UFC has kind of set him up to get another trademark win in his career. Outside of Barberena's incredible durability, I've never really been impressed with what I've seen from him. And even, the durability comes into question since his return from the major blood transfusion that he had. He's kind of always been a fighter that, is quote-unquote gritty. That's not something that you want to be called. Always good to have it in your back pocket, but when being able to take a beating is constantly mentioned in the attributes of your fight, it usually doesn't have a happy ending. Funny enough, Barberena is actually the younger of these two guys. I think he's taken significantly more damage than Gunnar Nelson. But at the end of the day, I do think that Barberena is at a significant grappling disadvantage here. If I didn't just watch RDA completely work him like a little brother, I think I would have a tad more hope for Barberena. But I seriously find it difficult to see this going any differently than Gunnar Nelson getting his signature submission win, or I'll give a minute of stand-up time for each round, so 12 minutes of back control time for Gunnar Nelson. I do think that this is kind of Nelson's fight to lose, and they're putting him in this spot on the pay-per-view in London to hype up the fans. They want Gunnar to get this win here, so I'm going Nelson here.
Yeah, it's a pretty stylistic fight that is easy to break down. Barb taking it on short notice, and it's a horrible stylistic matchup for him. His takedown defense is absolutely atrocious. You look at Jason Witt, who not only dropped him, but then took him down a bunch of times. Matt Brown took him down a bunch of times. Anthony Ivy took him down a bunch of times. But at the same time, I got a weird feeling, man. I don't want to lay this chalk on Gunnar Nelson. I think Gunnar Nelson is a really good hammer, but I think Gunnar Nelson's a really bad nail when things aren't really going his way. And if he just can't get the takedown, I don't know, man. Anytime it's going to be on the feet, Barberena has a way of forcing a brawl, forcing that pace and pressure upon you with great cardio, great volume and output. Gunnar's going to have some stuff that he's going to have to stifle, and he's been in the cage one time since 2019, and he's been out another year since even that Takashi Sato fight. I don't know, man. Gunnar's definitely the side. This This shouldn't even be the featured main bout, in my opinion. This is step downs from Shafkat versus Jeff Neal. I mean, my goodness, man. I don't know. He could be the apple pie shitter, or he could look minus 1,000, and I do lean to styles make fights. That's why Nelson's going to be the pick. But, dude, if Barberena could defend a takedown, I think he'd be live at plus 300. But I'm going to side with Gunnar Nelson as well.
For my fight of the night, I went with Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze, what we probably think should have been put in that third slot on the pay-per-view. 100%. This one I'm having a tough time calling, man. Initially, I hit you up with I wanted to bet the under. I wanted to bet the under just because of the Roman side, but you can't get past the durability of Vettori. He's like one of my least favorite fighters to watch. I mean, like, for sure he goes after it and everything, but it's like he's allergic to finishes, man. I mean, in his last 12 UFC fights, he's met win or lose. There's only been one finish, and it was against Carl Roberson. Like, that's not something that I'd be too proud about. I think the pressure and pace that Vettori puts on Roman will probably be enough to get the nod. Roman, on the other hand, he's never been finished in his career, and considering the beatings that I've seen Vettori take, I imagine it'd take a miracle for Roman to find a finish as well. I guess I have Vettori covering him just about everywhere. His best path to victory here is just to make Roman work. Roman's the type of guy where once you drain that power from him early, he's practically useless, and he'll just fish for submissions until the final bell rings. Honestly, I think we've said this before. Roman reminds me of Dricus du Plessis. He's someone who you tape and you would not think that he should be getting these high-quality wins over the top 15 of the division, but he's big enough and powerful enough that he just has to land once to change the entire course of a fight. Sadly, I do think that Vettori is going to just edge him out here. It's a stay-away fight for me. We were just talking. I thought about maybe laying that Marvin Vettori decision. It's juiced. It's probably one of the few middleweight fights that the over is juiced that I actually agree with. And I hate saying that. I want to have a hot take for this fight, but I don't. I think it's probably Vettori's fight.
Yeah, man, I think this is too big of a step up for Roman. I did parlay Vettori at minus 275. I'm completely okay with the 75% number. I think he wins this fight 3 out of 4 times. While he's never going to be champ, dude's always going to hang around that top 5 to 8 of the division. He's still only 29 years old. The guy's fought the who's who of the middleweight division. Durable as anybody I've known. Incredible gas tank. And, sure, tall, rangy, good footwork strikers, Izzy, Whitaker, they're going to outpoint him at range. They're too fast, but dude, that's not Roman Dolidze by no means. Marvin's a far better striker, the far faster striker, more output. I mean, the minute winning capabilities between the two are not even comparable. And while they both have good grappling, Marvin is the far better wrestler of the two, and I think is far more likely to wind up on top control, winning minutes, while Dolidze's accepting bottom position, hunting for submissions. But he is an opportunistic submission artist, and that's what has got him here, almost a meme to an extent, but I can't really say that at the same time because he absolutely meant to yank on Phil Hall's knee, who handicaps him before getting the finish. The calf splicer on Hermanson is not an accident, which leads to him getting on top. So he's very versed on the ground, man. But then you watch his fights with John Allen, the fight with Trevin Giles. I mean, there's not good looks in some of those fights for me when he's coming up here to take on a top middleweight like Vettori. I think those finishes are anomalies. I think they stop on Saturday. I think Vettori puts a pace and pressure on him that he can't keep. It does suck laying chalk on a fighter knowing it's probably going to go to decision, but that's something that you always just are going to have to do with Vettori. That's his main path to victory. I think an easy 30-27 and coming on Saturday. For my fight of the night, I'm taking Christian Leroy Duncan, taking on Dusko Todorovic. Another middleweight fight here for my fight of the night. In my opinion, looking to showcase here their Cage Warriors middleweight champion and Christian Leroy Duncan. A very fun guy to run tape back on, 7-0 as a pro, but you see a 23-fight extensive amateur career, fighting in the same organization as Makayev did when he was younger, working at Tiger Muay Thai ahead of his debut here this weekend. The guy is a very, very talented striker, a very diverse striker, wide variety of spinning attacks, flying knees. He is incredibly athletic. He has great size for this division. When he's out at range, there's a ton of hip feints from this guy. His left hook, very fast. I mean, this guy is extremely, extremely comfortable on the feet, and he's coming off back-to-back 5-rounders. I think Cage Warriors champions, I think that's a good breeding ground for a lot of people to come into the UFC. If you are able to make it to the top of that Cage Warriors show, you fought 5 rounds, you've been tested. I like the potential for Christian Leroy Duncan. But just like in every one of his fights, man, he can be wrestled down to the mat. And I think that's going to be a problem for him as he climbs the rankings. I think that's the path Dusko is going to try and take here. He doesn't really accept bottom position. He always does make you work back to his feet. He's a hard guy to hold down. And eventually he does make you pay on the feet. I kind of lean to that happening again here. Dusko, been a hard guy for me to cap because coming off the Contender Series, I thought we had a talented prospect. I really did, but I just have not seen really any improvements from him since. The hands are still kept very low. He's still a defensive reliability, being finished to 2 of his last 3 losses. Just head movement and nothing else, really. And then lately, kind of fancied himself a wrestler, shooting in takedowns on Sheedy, wrestling a whole bunch with Jordan Wright, actually losing round 1 to Jordan Wright, getting grinded out on the mat. And I just see him going back to that wrestling here against Christian Duncan. I think if it's out on the feet, I think it's Christian Duncan's fight all day, and I don't see Dusko being able to grind him out for 15 minutes. So do I think he lands 2 or 3 takedowns? I do. But a guy here has only beaten Daquan Townsend, Maki Pitolo, and Jordan Wright. It's hard for me to get a good read on is he able to beat one of these real nice prospects that the UFC wants, to hype up. And Christian Duncan could probably be his best UFC win to date if he is able to come through here as an underdog. But I don't think he does. I'm going to lead with the hometown guy. I like Christian Duncan. TKO probably round 2 or 3.
For my fighter to watch, I'm actually taking Malcolm X Gordon. 14-6 Malcolm Gordon, man. I think that he is in a spot where he could actually be an apple pie shitter. I think there's plenty of people who are going to be laying Hadley into the parlays. And this is kind of a do-or-die situation for Malcolm Gordon here. He's 2-3 in the UFC, and I do think that his future in the UFC is on the line in this spot here. The other thing that's driving me to want to bet Malcolm Gordon is I think the UFC absolutely hates Jake Hadley. I think that they purposefully set him up against Alon Nascimento, who was coming off of 2 losses and on paper looked like a good matchup for Hadley, but the UFC knew that Alon Nascimento's grappling was enough to really make an interesting fight for Hadley. After what I saw from Malcolm Gordon in his last fight with Muhammad Mukayev, sure, if you're just looking at Tapology, he lost.
Found a way to lose.
Yeah, he found a way to get finished at that. But he definitely covered his price tag in that Mukayev fight, made it close, and I think Mukayev's grappling is far better than Jake Hadley's. If we see a similar if we see a similar Malcolm Gordon come into this fight, I think that he can more than cover that plus 300 price tag and maybe even find himself a win. He kind of gets shit on because he has a black belt, but he gets submitted quite a bit. I do think that we're going to see the best version of Malcolm Gordon here. Even though he didn't get the win, I think that the confidence boost that he's going to get from making a close fight with the UFC's poster boy right now, Muhammad Mukayev, it'll be enough to make a close fight with Hadley. I'm not too high on Hadley, and I might just be looking to fade him. But Malcolm Gordon definitely is my fighter to watch. He's fighting for his job here, and they're putting him in a decent spot here.
Yeah, I saw a tweet this week that said, "Friends don't let friends bet on Malcolm Gordon." So I might try to talk you off of it, but what publicity would generate for the podcast if you hit a bet on Malcolm Gordon, man. Fighter to watch for me, I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy. A little bit of a late opponent change for him here. He was supposed to be fighting Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood got injured. And I messaged Lerone Murphy because I have him in this little fantasy league that I'm playing with Kelton and stuff online to see if I need to replace him. He responds immediately saying no, that they're trying to get him somebody on the card. So I know he's been working. I know he's not been, half-assed in this camp. He's known they're trying to get him a short notice opponent. And I think, I think Gabriel Santos is going to win fights in the UFC, but I think he is getting a much not well prepared opponent. I think it's a lot easier than his original matchup with Nathaniel Wood. Gabriel Santos, undefeated on paper, but really the last 2 wins are really the only 2 decent ones when I watch them back. The Marcio Barboza, Jose Delano, Santos wins those fights, but it's not without being hurt on the feet, bad himself. I was impressed with his ability to kind of walk through fire, but the skill set, I just don't think it's going to be enough to get the job done against Lerone Murphy. He throws a lot of naked left leg kicks, leaves himself just open to be hit. He's a little bit defensively responsible, and I don't think he has the wrestling, grappling base to come in here and really neutralize and take down Lerone Murphy. Lerone is the one fully prepared here, while Santos is having to fly to London on just a week's notice, cut the weight. He's having to fight out of Brazil for the first time in his career. I think Lerone's a better boxer. I think he's going to have the better gas tank, the home field advantage, the UFC experience. I didn't go too overboard because I do see Gabriel Santos as being a future guy in the division that's going to win some fights, but I got 1.5 units on him at minus 140, so Lerone Murphy's my fighter to watch this week.
For my underdog of the card, we've mentioned him quite a bit, but we're both laying the price on him. Justin Gaethje. I think that he's going to make this a very good fight against Rafael Fiziev. No doubt that it's going to be entertaining, but I do think that Justin has the dog in him that when and if it gets into the late second round, third round, I do think that we're going to see the willingness to give it everything from Justin Gaethje as opposed to Fiziev. So if in the last half of the second round he's winning on the judges' scorecards, he might take that round. And in the third round, I'm almost positive if it gets there, Justin Gaethje's going to be the one dictating the pace and winning the minutes. I think that there's an opportunity for him to win a decision. I think that there's more than enough opportunity for him to invest in those calf kicks early and chop Fiziev down to where he's not throwing as well. And, Justin Gaethje at this point in his career, he does still invite the dogfight, but he has been more patient with the shots that he's choosing to pick. It's just whenever he gets lined up against grapplers that we're seeing the biggest issues pop out. Thankfully, that's not the case here. I do think it's one of the better matchups that he's had. When you look back at his recent losses, Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev, or Khabib Nurmagomedov, this is a very winnable fight for him. And I think we're kind of just seeing a buy low spot from Gaethje coming off that loss to Oliveira. And then Fiziev, I think he's getting just pumped up. One from the UFC, from Dana, from the highlight reels. It's hard for people to look at the highlights that Fiziev's able to put together up in this run and not want to bet him. I think also a lot of people are wanting to lay the decision or wanting to lay inside the distance. I think that they could probably get screwed there. I mean, I know Gaethje, he invites the war, but it's tough to finish him. You'll rock him 5 times, but unless you have the finishing capabilities, he can drag this out. So I don't know if the line set at over under 1.5. You have to lay pretty heavy on the over 1.5, but I do think that that's kind of what I'm looking at. And if that hits, I also think that my underdog pick is going to hit with Justin Gaethje. So there's 2 different ways that I'd like to play this, Gaethje being my dog of the week.
Yeah, and bookies open this pick'ems minus 110 apiece. We've seen all the love on Fiziev, and then we sniped that plus 200, which we've seen even come down a little bit since then. So I think we got the best number we're going to get on Gaethje, and somebody's going to fight for $1, absolutely. Going to take the underdog in the main event, man. I'm going to take Leon Edwards for my underdog. I'll be the first to say that I probably shouldn't have cashed my plus 280 ticket on Leon last time around. He's clearly, Usman clearly going on to win that fight. He's won 35 of the 40 minutes these guys have fought. But this time around in the third fight, there are a lot of things outside the cage that kind of lean in Leon's favor. He's got all the confidence in the world knowing that he can sleep this guy with his best weapon. I think he's got the potential to have a better gas tank here at sea level, no flight, no time adjustments. You got the English crowd behind you this time backing you. And Usman's going to be 36 years old this year, man. Is our welterweight champion of the UFC really going to be 36 years old? That doesn't sit well with me, man. Leon is 100% the one who's in his prime right now. We typically see favorites come through at a very high clip on the pay-per-view. I think Only Alexa Grasso was the only underdog that won on the last pay-per-view. Also, European fighters seem to be in a pretty generous spot here. There was not a lot of fighters at plus money that stuck out to me. But I saw a stat this week as well. Former champions, 3-11 in immediate rematches getting their title shot back. Willing to ride? Leon Edwards, plus 180, plus 200. We'll ride with him one more time on his home turf.
My prop of the week seems to be like the people's prop of the week. It's a must to hit this. It's the Makwan Amirkhani round 1 submission plus 1,800, man. I don't know.
Only path to victory.
Only path to victory. You're getting a great number on it. Makwan, yeah, he's not a great MMA fighter, but for 5 minutes, that dude's going to give you a fight. Yeah. That dude is absolutely going to give you a fight. At plus 1,800, I really do think that there is significant value in that line. Makwan, he carries a ton of muscle and gasses out late. That's been the story of his career, and I think right now he looks in great physical shape. Submissions is number 1 path to victory, and I do think that Jack Shore is going to give him the opportunity. He's going to try and get the fight to the ground, and he might just wind up in a guillotine. Maybe an anaconda, I don't know. But I've got Makwan round 1 sub, and I don't expect him to win the fight if it gets out of that first round. So that's why specifically just round 1.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you got a grappler, and Jack Shore is probably going to try to take the fight to the mat and coming up a weight class for the first time as well. Incredible odds there. I feel like it's a must play as well. A little bit of juice on mine here. I'm going to go JoJo Wood by decision at minus 125. I don't know if I get to it personally, but I do see a lot of love out there for JoJo this week. I agree it's a buy low spot for her. I think she's the right side here. But 9 times out of 10, that it's going to be by decision here, and I don't think you should lay the almost 2-to-1 price tag on her. The women she's been fighting, man, it's levels above Carolina. You're talking about Grasso, Santos, probably the 2 girls who have beaten Valentina, and we can even go on to Owen Murphy, Maya, Chuk, the other 3 girls who have fought Valentina for a belt. I mean, she's fought the best of the best that the flyweight division has to offer, and I don't think that, maybe 5 years from now, Luana Carolina can beat her, but I don't think at any point in her UFC career, Luana is going to edge out JoJo. I think she's got the wrestling edge, the striking edge, the volume edge. She's just on a bad skid, and she's almost 40 years old. But other than that, I think she's got the tools to beat Luana Carolina. Carolina's lost by knee bar to Lipsky, the spinning back elbow to Molly McCann. I mean, those are worse anomalies than Roman Dolidze's wins. And she's withstood the power of Cachoeira over 15 minutes. She stayed safe from the grappling of Lupi for 15 minutes. If you want to play JoJo, man, you need to take the best number possible. Most likely going to be by decision.
Moving on to our best bet section. I don't have a great one, man. It's tough for me to get a really good spot on this card, but if there's one thing I'm looking down the card that I think is going to happen and we can get plus money on it, it's Gunnar Nelson by submission, man. We pointed out Barberena has terrible grappling. He's at an awful grappling disadvantage. Gunnar Nelson in his last fight against Takashi Sato dropped the ball by not getting that submission. But I think the UFC is honestly, they're putting him in this spot on the pay-per-view card. It's in Nelson's backyard practically, and this is another very winnable fight for him. The path to victory there is clear as day, and you can get plus money on it. So for me, it's Gunnar Nelson by submission is my best bet on the card. But that kind of tells you how I feel about this card as a whole,
So as a lot of people, pissed off at Gunnar for not finishing Sato that last time around, he was in zero danger in that fight and had been off for like 2 years.
That's true.
I think he was just trying to get some cage time, get some ring rust knocked off. The takedown's probably even going to come easier here. Won't be surprised if he finishes with a sub. Best bet for me, Omar Morales at a pick'em price tag. I don't want to be a dick, but I do not think that Chris Duncan is that good, if you're being honest with you, man. I think we got a guy who is, I told you him and Trevor Peek would be an insane fight because they fight pretty much the same way. They walk forward recklessly. I think they both mismanage their gas tank. I think he's literally a walking punching bag who does not know how to take his head off the center line. Another guy who just loads up for home run shots with his right hand. You watch his 2 Contender Series performances. I mean, Slavakos walks this guy down and, I mean, knocks him out a couple times almost. You know, in the second Contender Series performance against Charlie Campbell, he catches like back-to-back 3 uppercuts or something like that. It's almost hurt, almost finished there, and Charlie Campbell rushes things and walks right into a right hand, man. You know, I'll give it to him. He's got power in his right hand, but the skill set is very limited, man. And Omar, on the other hand, I think we're getting a buy low spot on a guy who's just not had a lot of success lately, but a guy who's fought the far better competition. The losses to Giga Chikadze and Uros Medic they can't even be more polar opposite than what Chris Duncan is going to pull in here. You're talking about like 6 foot tall kickboxers who work the body with kicks and keep range. It's completely different than what he has here. Omar is a cleaner boxer. Omar has better durability. He's better defensively. I think he's a better wrestler, better gas. I mean, Omar to me has way more spots and ways to win this fight. You're getting an overreaction on a guy who was hurt and able to come back and win, just like you saw Trevor Peek at minus 200 because he gets some come from behind knockout, showing you that he's a dog. Omar Morales is the better fighter here by far. I pick him. I got 2 units on him to win Saturday.
Moving on to the quick pick section of the podcast, we start off the night in the flyweight division where we see Juliana Miller taking on Veronica Hardy. I've got Juliana Miller here. I don't think they like Dan Hardy or his wife,
right.
So
yeah,
Juliana Miller for me.
It does seem like Juliana Miller is going to be the side here, and I want to take her inside the distance run under, but I don't know if I want to lay juice on that. You know, Juliana Miller is going to be the pick. Jai Herbert versus Ludovic Klein. I wish Jai Herbert had a chin because I think he's a live dog. Not only is he an Englishman, but dude's got some long, rangy kicks, strikes. Jai Herbert, dog.
Yeah, Jai Herbert is also a dog for me.
Nice.
I think Klein's moving up a weight class, and it'll be similar to Ilia Topuria, only Klein isn't as good as Ilia Topuria, and Ilia ran into some problems. Moving down to the women's flyweight again, we have Joanne Wood taking on Luana Carolina. I'm on Joanne Wood here, not laying the price on her, though.
Yeah, I probably won't have any track play, but I gave you a prop this week. Joanne Wood by decision. 4th fight, men's flyweight, Jake Hadley versus Malcolm Gordon. Friends don't let friends bet Malcolm Gordon. I think Jake Hadley inside the distance.
Nobody can stop me, man. I think I will probably end up finding some units or half a unit something on Malcolm Gordon. Yeah, I'm not proud of it, but it'll probably happen. Moving up to middleweight, Christian Leroy Duncan taking on Dusko Todorovic. I don't like Dusko at all. Probably a setup fight for Christian Leroy, but yeah, I'll be taking Leroy. Don't know if I'm playing it, but I think it's his fight.
Yeah, I got Christian Leroy Duncan inside the distance. Moving up, Lerone Murphy taking on Gabriel Santos. Gabriel Santos is going to win fights in the UFC. I just think he's at a whole lot of disadvantages and a lot of intangibles coming in on a short notice fight, not in his favor. Lerone Murphy, my fighter to watch this week, and my pick to win this fight.
I don't know. Close fight for sure. I'll pick Lerone Murphy just because he isn't taking it on short notice, but I think it'll be a really good fight. Moving up, flyweight division, Muhammad Mokaev taking on Rafael Filho. I've got Mokaev here. I'm usually laying the juice on Mokaev. I have in every single fight that he's had so far, but this will be the first one that I'm not. So I'm picking him, but I don't know. When you almost take Malcolm Gordon to decision, it makes me think maybe you just aren't as good as I thought you were. So I'm going with Mokaev, not playing it.
I did play Mokaev. I got him parlayed with Vettori for 2.5 units. I think them two are some safe bets this week. Moving up, Sam Patterson taking on Yanel Ashmos. A fight that I think is going to be very, very good, man. Both these guys are going to have finishing opportunities. I bet the under 2.5 here in this fight. Pick and method, I think Sam Patterson gets the sub.
Yeah, I was able to cash on Sam Patterson's sub plus 500 in his Contender Series debut. It makes me want to go back to the well here, but I'd have to look into the fight a little bit more. I'll lean Sam Patterson in this spot. Staying in the same weight class, moving up on the card, Chris Duncan taking on Omar Morales. You seem to have a pretty heavy read on Morales. I haven't looked into the fight enough, but yeah, I do also lean Omar Morales here. Just the level of experience, I like that in his favor.
Yeah, I really like Omar Morales. A few people on Twitter that I really take into high regard as well. I see on Omar, so it makes me feel good about it, man. Jack Shore versus Makwan Amirkhani. We got our prelim main event here. Jack Shore moving up. Makwan round 1 is a motherfucker, but I think Jack Shore's grappling is enough that he's going to stay safe and probably find the finish in round 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm going with Makwan here. I don't know. Shore going up a weight class, putting it in the wheelhouse of Makwan to get this done. I've got his round 1 subtract, and I'm going to stick with it. So Makwan here. Moving up to the middleweight division, Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze. I don't like Marvin Vettori. I'll pick him here, but I don't like it, and I'd love to see Roman get the finish.
No, I hope not. I got Marvin Vettori here. I think he's a pretty safe bet to win a clear-cut decision. Jennifer Maia taking on Casey O'Neill. O'Neill coming back after ACL tear, bad injury. If she comes back to Casey O'Neill that left us, I think her cardio and her grappling is going to be enough to get her decision. But Jennifer Maia is a very good litmus test if you're going to be in the top 5 of that division or not. I'm going to side with Casey O'Neill, but there will not be a bet on that fight from me.
I'm going to go with Jennifer Maia here.
Don't hate it.
I don't know. Level of competition, I really like that Jennifer Maia has faced, the best of the best.
Yeah.
And with the ACL tear, it's hard to judge how somebody's going to look. And when Jennifer Maia would by far be her best win to date, it's tough to lay the juice on fucking Casey O'Neill. I've got Jennifer Maia in that fight. Moving up the card, we go to the welterweight division where we see Gunnar Nelson taking on Bryan Barberena. I'm on Gunnar Nelson here. I hope he finds that sub that he's been searching for in his last 3.
I wish Bryan could defend a takedown because I think I would hit the plus 300 money line, but he can't, and he's got a guy who's going to absolutely shoot for those takedowns and is a nasty submission artist. I like Gunnar by sub too. Moving on, co-main event. God dang, dude. Absolute fireworks. Justin Gaethje, Fiziev, lightweight division. Plus 200. Justin Gaethje, completely disrespectful. Think he's going to close that distance and make this an absolute firefight. Give me Justin Gaethje.
Yep, Justin Gaethje is the pick. Plus 200, crazy line. So glad we sniped that. Moving to the main event, Leon Edwards taking on Kamaru Usman. As of right now, filming the podcast, there's a plus 230 out there on Leon Edwards. That's probably enough for me to lay a unit on him. I do think that there's a ton of things that are going in his favor this time around. Yeah. So with that price tag, it'll probably force my hand into laying a little bit on Leon. Leon's the pick.
Gonna side with you, man. Back-to-back dogs, co-main and main event. I went to the well with him the first time, and I'm gonna go back with him on his home turf again. Let's go Leon Edwards to retain his belt and, man, put a big stamper on the Kamaru Usman GOAT talk that was there for a while, Yeah, Leon Edwards is going to be the pick. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We got 15 fights going down this Saturday in London for UFC 286. We will not be here next week. We'll be on vacation, so we'll have a week off. We'll be back for the following week. We'll see you guys then.
Peace.